Hello, morning, everyone. We're in term 2, as we know, on the diploma course. And just to make a couple of little announcements. So last week we did the Houses of Parliament visit. We've got an employment tribunal planned for the 17th of March. So this term, as you can see from the layout, is looking at week 13, employment status. So one of the key things to understand is that not every worker has rights. And the first activity we did there, which was a kind of race, but basically using real case studies within that, is to then find out, right, what's the difference between employee, worker and self-employed. And in fact, I made a little reference on a news item on my Twitter announcements talking about the growth of self-employment, which in effect, and this is part of understanding employment law as public policies, you now have 50 million workers with no rights. I mean, that's the upshot, really. The second activity in week 2 is looking at how a contract is formed and what's included in a contract. Both of those activities will help you meet 1.1 and 1.2. I reckon the second activity would be useful. Last night we did week 14. Let me click on that. So there's two activities. Both of them meet 1.3, so either or will do. The first activity is a board game, but in effect, if you have a look at the cards, what they are is a series of case studies. And you can write basically 2 or 3 examples. In effect, the way I wrote it is, one is what is an employer proposing, and then what the union is saying, and then you find out and research whether the union was right, wrong, what are some of the issues with the advice, or even with the circumstances, even though the advice might be right. And what I mean by that is, if the union is saying basically you've got no rights, what does that mean? If your members were to be affected by that. If you click, you will see that you can download the various documents, and I've also got resources with it. Let me go back. The second activity is, to be honest, is an either or. But the second activity we looked at earlier in the year about Labour's proposals extending union negotiations, collective bargaining. Obviously, that's now gone, that's forgotten about, given that they didn't win the election. So what we're left with is what the current law says around when a union negotiates on our behalf, what happens to our contracts. And the key term here is incorporation. And that's both a strength and a weakness. Because where unions negotiate contracts is in decline and has been. So there's less workers covered by this approach. So that in itself ought to be worrying. But what this activity does is get you to think about, what does the law say if a union was negotiating a pay rise, a new sickness absence policy, a new redundancy policy. The Thompson's article, I think, is one of the best to explain how what the union negotiates then becomes part of our contract, to give it some legal status. There is a discussion after that, which I haven't necessarily included in the activity, which is, well, what does that mean? Does it mean an employer cannot change? Does it mean? Some of that is covered in the first activity. So, my suggestion, ideally, would be that you get to do both, but either or will do for the purposes of the portfolio. Keep looking at my Twitter announcements. I always try and provide a little bit of a different angle on things, get you thinking, particularly, thinking as to, what is going on out there, how does that affect employment law, and if we were thinking about our members, just trying to get some of that wider understanding. Other than that, look, I hope you continue uploading your work. I'll see you hopefully next week, and have a good weekend. Bye.